Imagine a world where the very essence of truth is twisted and the line between wellness and deception becomes perilously blurred. Welcome to the first episode of Netflix's new limited series, Apple Cider Vinegar, where we dive headfirst into the murky waters of wellness, fraud, and its real-life consequences. Welcome to Disability UK. I'm Joy, an occupational therapist and disability advocate living with multiple sclerosis. I'm here to deconstruct myths about disability and give my 2 cents on media portrayals of disability. In today's episode, I'm going to discuss my thoughts on episode 1 of Netflix's new limited series, Apple Cider Vinegar. I first learned about Belle Gibson and her wellness fraud a little over a year ago after reading the book The Woman Who Fooled the World by Donelly and Nick Toscano. This book is a fantastic piece of investigative journalism that exposes Belle's fraud and the ripple effect this had on those who came into her wellness sphere. As we go through this series, you'll find that the many issues in the wellness industry are not limited to Belle's con, but that the chronically ill and disabled are routinely preyed upon by the wellness industry. As they state in the show, Apple Cider Vinegar is a true story based on a lie. Like any docudrama, this series fictionalizes true events, recreating conversations, merging certain characters, and making specific editorial decisions. While not 100% accurate, this series explores the real consequences of what happens when pseudoscience, wellness, and chronic illness collide. In this series, I'm going to go episode by episode, looking at the themes presented through the lens of someone living with an incurable chronic illness and an occupational therapist, interested in how OT can play a vital role in public health, especially for disabled populations. And here is my thesis. Disabled folks are either often entirely overlooked in the wellness space or preyed upon by conspiritualists and wellness gurus looking to make money from us. It is extraordinarily difficult to find community in this space without bumping into bad actors at every turn. And here's the thing that this series does really well. There are bad actors like Belle Gibson who are con artists, but there are also plenty of people out there who are disabled or living with chronic illness, spreading misinformation that they believe it's true to the detriment of their own health and the people in their community. There is no way for me to unpack every detail and character in this series. So in this episode, I'm going to introduce our 3 main characters. Belle, a con artist who builds a social media empire on the lie that she has treated her terminal brain cancer through healthy eating. Milla, a young woman diagnosed with epithelioid sarcoma who decides to forego medical treatment and instead treats her cancer with alternative therapies, including diet, exercise, yoga, and mindfulness. And Lucy, a young woman diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer who follows both Belle and Milla on Instagram and struggles with the terrible side effects of traditional medicine while finding inspiration in Belle and Milla's alternative health journey. The first thread that I'm going to talk about is the idea of toxic positivity. Toxic positivity is the pervasive message to keep your chin up and ignore difficult or negative emotions. Examples include ignoring your own painful or negative emotions, dismissing others' negative emotions, and even sharing positive quotes about negative situations. It is a constant quest to find the bright side of a really shitty situation. This is more than mere optimism. It is a consistent pattern of behavior where negative emotions and experiences are denied in a way that has significant mental health consequences. Both Belle and Milla fall into the trap of espousing toxic positivity. Belle uses it as a tool to ensnare a vulnerable audience. At the very beginning of the episode, Belle says things like, "Human beings are capable of anything," and "you can do anything with hope." Statements like these create a false sense of hope and deny us the space to grieve, make informed decisions about our healthcare, and connect with other disabled folks who are further along in their healing so that we can have realistic examples of hope. On the other hand, Mila is coming to terms with the fact that her oncologist has recommended that her arm be amputated in the hopes of preventing her cancer from spreading. It's not just a hope. There is evidence that an amputation would reduce the chance of her cancer coming back or spreading by over 80%. Mila is experiencing real negative emotions around this treatment option, but suppresses these emotions deeply. There's a moment where we think Mila is going to go through with having the surgery, and that perhaps she has found the strength to clap back at the messaging around being a good, happy girl and allow herself to grieve. Instead, Mila throws herself into the wellness world, opting to rebel against modern medicine, and she attempts to cure herself through these alternative methods. Unfortunately, I see this as just the other side of the same coin. While she's not being the good girl in the eyes of modern medicine, the toxic positivity she espouses in her wellness journey keeps her in the same trap of not being able to confront that absolutely reality that her best chance of survival is amputation. In Mila's situation, she absolutely has a right to make medical decisions for herself. However, she has difficulty being realistic about the outcomes of her choices. The medical establishment gives her percentage probabilities of survival, while the wellness community offers endless hope that isn't grounded in reality or evidence. Related to the concept of toxic positivity is the idea that one's health status is completely within their control. Similarly to toxic positivity, where you can just choose to be happy, health as an individual responsibility states that you can just choose to be healthy. There are multiple times within the episode where the characters frame health as a choice. Mila shares that she regrets all the eating out and drinking she did, stating that she knew that the she put into herself would cause issues down the line. She states that she could have, should have taken care of myself. She is saying that she caused her cancer, which then makes her think that she can heal her cancer. At this moment, she decides that she is going to stop thinking with her head and start feeling with her body. I absolutely get this because, especially in the US, we have this idea that health is determined by individual choices. However, research actually shows that our health is far more impacted by social determinants, such as income, education, housing, discrimination, and many other social or societal factors. So why do we continually hear this narrative that people need to take individual responsibility for their health choices? I have a few ideas. One, if you're non-disabled and have good health, messaging about health as an individual choice means that you don't have to feel guilty about disabled and chronically ill folks because we did it to ourselves. Two, changing the systems and structures that lead to poor health is much, much harder than telling someone else they should just make some simple lifestyle changes. Three, as a chronically ill person, changing systems and structures feels pretty hopeless. So we may grab onto this idea of personal responsibility because it feels like one thing in our life that we can control. And four, society makes chronically ill and disabled folks feel like a waste and a burden. When we point out the social factors that are preventing us from accessing health and well-being, there's lots of backlash from non-disabled folks. Humans are a species that seek pattern and build meaning. This is a good thing, and that we are rich storytellers and can think in incredibly abstract ways. On the other hand, it's a bad thing because we are constantly trying to figure out why bad things happen and then ascribing a supernatural or spiritual element to it. Mila is crafting a story in her mind that her cancer was caused by drinking, eating certain foods, staying up late, all that. It's like societal pressure, toxic positivity, individualism all collide into a narrative that she got herself into this position, and she is responsible for getting herself out. There is so much to unpack here. When one of my friends was going through breast cancer treatment, people often asked her why she thought she got cancer. Her response was, "Life is a filing cabinet and I have a drawer called bad shit happens. My cancer lives in that drawer." What my friend was saying is that there is no specific reason why she got breast cancer. It just happened, with no greater reason than that cancer is a thing that happens, and unluckily, it happened to her. There was no deeper meaning to be had. There was no sliding doors moment when a decision was made that sent her down the cancer road. Watching the series, I wanted to give Mila a hug and let her know that no matter how much or how little she partied or ate cheeseburgers, cancer is bad shit that just happens. So let's debunk some of those myths around health and cancer. While alcohol consumption increases one's risk of developing 7 different types of cancer, there is no direct causation. In looking at the literature, one would have to be consuming a significant amount of alcohol for an extended period. For example, studies have found increased risk of stomach and pancreatic cancer for those drinking 3 or more alcoholic drinks daily. That's a significant amount of alcohol consumption. In Mila's case, she was diagnosed with epithelioid sarcoma, which is not associated with alcohol consumption. It is a rare cancer that is most likely to appear in adolescents and young adults, and there is no way to prevent the onset of this cancer. What we don't talk about is that in all of those scenes of her partying with friends, there are hundreds of people in the club making the exact same choices as Mila who aren't getting cancer. There are also plenty of people who get cancer after a lifetime of abstaining from drugs and alcohol. It's one thing to mitigate your cancer risk by wearing sunscreen, having screenings if cancer runs in your family, or abstaining from smoking. However, there is no way to eliminate one's risk, and it's not okay to blame people for developing cancer, even when they didn't do everything they possibly could to mitigate those risks. There are some things in life over which we have very little control, and we have to be able to sit in that discomfort. But if we constantly try to frame everything through toxic positivity, we will never have the space to grieve our bad luck, express anger about how crappy it is to be chronically ill, and have bad days. Of course, we can't be in this negative space all the time, but at the end of the day, it's about allowing yourself to experience and express both the negative emotions while also finding moments of joy and hope for the future. Related to this idea of finding a reason and taking control is the sense that the medical profession does things to you, not with you. While I absolutely use conventional medicine in my own treatment, one critique I have of the system is that we often feel as if things are being done to us and we have very little agency. I think part of this is that there are insufficient mental health supports available as part of conventional treatment. In this episode, we see Lucy undergoing testing, surgery, and chemotherapy as a relentless montage of impersonal interventions where her body is an object to be treated. For me, there has to be a meeting in the middle. We can't escape the diagnosis, but our diagnosis isn't the only part of us that should be seen and recognized. I can't treat my MS as wholly separate from my identity because my disability shapes my life experience and life experience shapes my identity. Also, MS has massively changed my body, which has impacted what I can do and impacted my identity. For example, before my diagnosis, I ran a half marathon. Being a runner was a part of my identity. As my MS has progressed, it's hard for me to walk, let alone run. These changes have resulted in shifts to my identity, which can't be separated out from me as a whole person. Milla tries to articulate this in a meeting with her healthcare team where they are discussing her upcoming amputation. The medical providers know that her best chance of survival is amputation. It feels rather black and white to them. Amputate the arm, have an 89% chance of recovery. Don't amputate, you have a very high risk of death. Easy decision, right? Meanwhile, we cut to a scene of Milla scrolling the internet, looking at what life might look like with an upper limb amputation. She sees articles about the difficulty of recovery, prosthetic devices, and the increased risk of workplace discrimination. As the person living in the unwell body, we have to live out the ramifications of our decision. The surgeon will not face discrimination or body dysmorphia. They will not have to struggle with phantom limb pain and deal with the side looks and terrible questions. They won't have to reconcile their decision and with wondering if there was another option that wasn't disabling. And then you see Belle Gibson, a beautiful woman who treated her cancer the natural way. And you think, yeah, if I just work hard enough, that can be me. And I too can stop getting conventional treatment. Alternatively, let's say you make the decision to amputate. And then you see Belle, a beautiful woman who treated her cancer the natural way, and you think, if only I had trusted the wisdom of my body, I wouldn't have gone through all this awful shit and slide into guilt, depression, and distrust of the medical establishment, who you now see as cutting off your arm unnecessarily. What you don't know is that Belle Gibson never had cancer. You don't know whether that influencer is following a healthy lifestyle on camera while drinking and doing drugs off camera. You also don't know if she's getting chemo or other conventional treatment off camera that are actually responsible for her good outcomes. We, the patient, the chronically ill, we have to regularly make incredibly hard medical decisions that have knock-on effects to the rest of our lives. On one shoulder, we have doctors telling us how we can save our bodies without acknowledging the impacts these treatments have on our lives. And on the other shoulder is this wellness industry promising us a cure that will keep our humanity and personhood intact without evidence to substantiate their claims. I wonder what a difference it would make if Milla was provided with psychological support where she could talk through her fears and concerns with a qualified mental health professional, a place where she could be seen as a whole person who has to make a really hard decision. In my own treatment, I paid out of pocket for this support. My psychologist helped me feel confident in my medical decisions by talking through my emotions around my treatment options. She helped me explore my fears around possible futures and how I might handle these futures. While I ultimately made all of my own medical decisions, she was able to help me use my head and heart together to make really tough decisions. In the scene with her healthcare team, I wanted one member of the medical team to say, having your arm amputated is a huge decision. It's scary and it sucks. I wish we had a treatment option that would allow you to keep your arm. What we can do is proceed with the amputation, which has an 89% success rate. If you choose to proceed with an alternative therapy and it doesn't work, you will miss the treatment window and will only be able to offer end-of-life care. At that point, it has to be up to Milla to make a decision about her health care, and she may make a decision that is not in her own best interest or that has a poor outcome. In my experience, bullying people into a certain treatment rarely has a good outcome. This is what we mean by informed consent. Here are the benefits, here are the risks, here is the support in helping you process a really complicated decision. Ultimately, I want Milla to be able to unpack her fears around being a good girl. I want her to stop blaming herself for getting cancer. I want her to cry and rage and be negative. I want her to be able to process all this grief and hope that she is holding so that she can make these really tough and unrelenting decisions from a space of self-compassion and to cultivate her hope for her future. I focused on Mila and Belle a lot when unpacking this episode because they are the primary influencers in this story. One spreading toxic messages for her own gain, both emotionally and financially, and the other spreading them as she tries to work out her own struggles with cancer. Regardless of who the message it comes from, toxic positivity is always toxic. So is blaming individuals for their health condition. I can absolutely relate to the idea that the medical system only sees your cancer or your MS, and that also feels really toxic. And so we go searching for something that is healing without being toxic. It reminds me of the hero's journey, wherein the hero tries to solve the problem through 100 other ways and means before realizing that they must confront the problem head on and grapple within the darkness. While this works in a docudrama like Cider Vinegar, the reality is that many people are pulled into the wellness world and never have the opportunity for resolution. They die still on the journey, hoping for a better outcome, never finding the resolution of a cure or the acceptance of a slow path towards further disability or death. They are left in a limbo state, always pushing for an intangible outcome that's just out of reach. What this episode really highlights for me is that the wellness world and traditional medicine can both be incredibly toxic. We need to be able to hold two truths about medicine, which is really uncomfortable. One truth is that medicine often gives us the best chance of survival and can be really dehumanizing. We can step back and look at the results of medicine to gain a clearer picture of potential outcomes. When it comes to wellness, it may fulfill a spiritual or emotional need, but it has a poor track record for curing disease. And while there are bad actors in both the medical field and the wellness industry, hospitals and health departments have a responsibility to identify bad actors and protect patients from these people. But the wellness industry has no such compunction, and there is no protection for the vulnerable populations who are targeted by their undue influence. Let me know in the comments if you've watched the series and what your thoughts are on this episode. Does any of the characters' experiences resonate with you? I always forget to ask people to subscribe, but please subscribe if you like my content. It helps other people find this channel. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.